Now, Gerrie Nel, of course, being his fiery self during his cross-examination of Scholz, and what did you make of reports that correctional officers were sort of verbally abused by Oscar? He was quite aggressive towards them, sort of bratish kind of behavior, but just his sort of temperament is still proof that he's susceptible to sort of explosive behavior. Also, another, I guess, sort of damning bit of evidence that came out today was, or rather statement, was that he supposedly witnessed a rape in prison, and then the guy subsequently hanging himself. What did you make of all of that?
Well, one felt sorry for Professor Jonathan Scholz at a time there, because remember, his job was just to assess Oscar Pistorius and to furnish the court with a report and then to testify accordingly. So all of these incidents which occurred, where he slammed the table in frustration because he was not allowed to see or to receive painkillers for an injured hand, as well as the alleged incidents where he witnessed a rape, and all of these things where people verbally abused him whilst he was incarcerated. It's all left untested because Oscar Pistorius will not be testifying himself. So definitely a difficult position that Professor Scholz finds himself in. Remember that his only duty was to evaluate him psychologically, make an assessment, and then inform the court of his findings, because he is regarded as an expert psychologist. So again, we'll have to wait and see, what weight the court attaches to his report and his assessment of Pistorius, and we'll also have to wait and see whether the state indeed calls these officials at the Department of Correctional Services to testify whether he did display this aggressive behavior whilst incarcerated, or whether he was in fact well behaved.
Ulrich, during this cross-examination, Nel asks Scholz, did Oscar Pistorius indicate to you that he intentionally shot at the door, intending to kill? And after sort of a bit of back and forth and arguing, Scholz said yes, he did, to which Nel then replied, that's the first version of an intentional shooting that court has heard. That was quite significant.
Mm. Yeah, I think once again, I must say, poor Professor Jonathan Scholz in a difficult position there, because Nell is quite correct when he says that it's the first time that Pistorius has actually accepted responsibility for murdering Reeva Steenkamp. But, for a psychologist to now come and testify about the legal terminology and the technical aspects of the crime it was unfair in my mind, and Barry Roux should have stood up and he should have objected to that. The reason why I say that is because there's all the permutations of error in persona. In other words, whether he knew it was Reeva Steenkamp behind the door, whether he perceived it to be an intruder, actually is irrelevant. So whether he said to the professor that, yes, I knew I shot whoever was behind the door, how can the professor testify about that? Because the court has already found him to be guilty of murder. But again, that is Harinal's style, and I think he's also frustrated. I think if Oscar Pistorius had testified personally, then he wouldn't have to ask these questions of Jonathan Scholz, which actually amount to being hearsay evidence, because it is evidence that Pistorius would have conveyed to him during consultation. It's not directly from Pistorius, so therefore it cannot be subjected to proper cross-examination. And we will have to wait and see once again whether the judge attaches the necessary weight to it, or whether the judge just says, well, this man, we cannot have regard to any of this testimony because it amounts to hearsay, and the accused person elected not to testify himself.
Ulrich, final question. How do you see the rest of the week playing out? And when do you sort of predict a sort of final sentencing to be passed down?
Well, I think, tomorrow we could expect the defense to possibly call a social worker who's also evaluated Pistorius. We could possibly also see a member of the Department of Correctional Services who can testify as towards his good nature whilst he was incarcerated also being called. And I still believe that it would serve him well if he were to testify himself. There's no one who can convey to the court as accurately as Pistorius can about the effects that this crime has had on his life, how emotionally and psychologically he's a broken man, how he truly shows remorse for what he's done, and how he truly wants to be rehabilitated and then contribute positively, not only towards society, but in general, if he was not to receive a prison sentence. So I think we could expect that. And then from the state side, definitely a member of the Steenkamp family once again will come and testify as to the effect that this murder has not only had on them as the close family, but also on society in general. Once again, the three main factors that the court needs to consider when reaching a proper sentence and handing it down a proper sentence is firstly the personal circumstances of the accused, secondly the seriousness or the severity of the offense, and thirdly the interests of society. And the interests of society weighs very hard in this matter. Remember that South Africa is a country that struggles with domestic violence matters and spousal violence and those things. And once again, it's an innocent person who lost her life. So the right message must be sent out by the court, and the state should be calling those witnesses. Also, the state could call a member of the Department of Correctional Services to come and testify that they have adequate facilities to accommodate Pistorius should he receive a prison sentence, and that he will be treated such as any other inmate if he was sentenced to prison. I cannot foresee Judge Masipa handing down sentence this week already. I think that she will have to consider all the evidence properly, especially since her initial judgment was overturned. She would want to make sure that she takes her time properly and properly considers and evaluates all evidence before she hands down a sentence. So possibly more evidence being led by the defense tomorrow, the state leading evidence on Wednesday, possibly Friday, and the matter will then most likely be postponed for the sentence to be handed down.